My greetings to everyone watching this video. This is Nikitha from First MSc Food Service Management and Dietetics. Today, we will be learning about the abnormalities of micturition, under which we'll be talking about the atonic bladder, automatic bladder, inhibited bladder, and nocturnal bladder. So these are the topics we'll be talking about in this video. Firstly, before we get into the topic, let's look at what exactly the process of excretion is. Excretion is a life process which is as important as nutrition. In animals, including humans, as a part of metabolism, many waste products are produced. Animals excrete them in different forms, such as urine, sweat, feces, and tears. Among these, the usual form of excreta, urine, is produced and discarded from our body as fluid. Before we get into the abnormalities of micturition, first let us watch a video that explains about the process of micturition. The micturition reflex involves impulses traveling from the urinary bladder to the sacral region of the spinal cord, and from the sacral region of the spinal cord back to the bladder. It is coordinated by neurons in the spinal cord and can be influenced by signals from the brain. When the urinary bladder becomes stretched, there is an increase in the frequency of the action potentials carried from the bladder wall to the sacral region of the spinal cord. In response, parasympathetic neurons from the spinal cord to the bladder are activated, and this causes the smooth muscle on the bladder wall to contract. The sensory signals to the sacral region of the spinal cord also stimulate ascending pathways to the pons and cerebrum, which results in a conscious desire to urinate. If urination is not convenient at the time, the brain sends impulses down the spinal cord to inhibit the micturition reflex. Impulses carried via somatic motor neurons keep the external urinary sphincter contracted, which also prevents urination. When urination is desired, signals from the brain stimulate the micturition reflex. The brain also decreases action potentials in the somatic motor neurons to relax the external urinary sphincter. Coming to the types of abnormalities of micturition, there are 4 types of abnormalities. The first one is atonic bladder, the second one automatic bladder, the third one is neurogenic bladder, and the last one is nocturnal bladder. So what is an atonic bladder? An atonic bladder, sometimes called a flaccid or acontractile bladder, refers to a bladder whose muscles don't fully contract. This makes it harder to urinate. Someone with an atonic bladder might sense that they need to urinate, but they are unable to, because their bladder muscles just won't contract. As a result, your bladder can overflow with urine, causing leakage and discomfort. So what are the symptoms of an atonic bladder? The main symptom of an atonic bladder is urine spilling out of your bladder. This is known as overflow incontinence. When this happens, you frequently leak urine, but your bladder never fully empties. What causes an atonic bladder? Neurogenic conditions, injuries, or obstruction. Coming to the automatic bladder, which is caused by spinal cord damage above the sacral region. If the spinal cord is damaged above the sacral region, but the sacral cord segments are still intact, typical micturition reflexes can still occur. However, they are no longer controlled by the brain. During the first few days to several weeks after the damage to the cord has occurred, the micturition reflexes are suppressed because of the state of the spinal shock, caused by the sudden loss of facilitative impulses from the brainstem and cerebrum. However, if the bladder is still emptied periodically by catheterization to prevent bladder injury caused by overstretching of the bladder, the excitability of the micturition reflex gradually increases under typical micturition reflexes return. Then, periodic bladder emptying occurs. The bladder and urinary sphincter are muscles that work together to store and empty urine throughout the day. For children with neurogenic bladder, the nerves that control the bladder and urinary sphincter or the muscles themselves are not working correctly. This can result in muscles that are too strong or too weak, a bladder that is unable to stretch, or a bladder and sphincter that do not work together. Every neurogenic bladder is different. Sometimes children with neurogenic bladder have a bladder that squeezes out urine when it is not supposed to, or a sphincter that is too weak to hold urine inside the bladder. This leads to urinary incontinence, which is when the child leaks urine when they don't want to. Sometimes children with neurogenic bladder have a bladder that does not squeeze urine out completely, or a sphincter that is too strong and holds urine in. This leads to leftover urine in the bladder that can collect bacteria and cause urinary tract infections or crystal formation in the urine that grow into bladder stones. Sometimes problems in the bladder can cause problems with the kidneys. If the bladder muscle is too strong or if your child is unable to urinate, pressure can build up in the bladder and back up into the kidneys, causing damage or even kidney failure. Moving on to the final condition, that is nocturnal bladder. Nocturia is a condition that causes you to wake up during the night to urinate. This can be a thought of as nocturnal urinary frequency, which is having to urinate more often at night. This condition becomes more common as people age and occurs in both men and women, sometimes for different reasons too. It can be common for most people to wake up once during the night to urinate, but urinating more frequently may be a sign of something else going on. Nocturia can be associated with daytime urinary frequency or occur by itself. It's important to distinguish nocturia. What are the causes of nocturia? There are many possible causes of nocturia depending on the type. The types of nocturia include polyuria, nocturnal urinary frequency. And the symptoms of nocturia can include waking up more than once a night to urinate, urinating more volume if polyuria is present, fatigue or sleeplessness, even after waking up. This occurs because the frequent urinations can interrupt your sleep cycle. Well, the two main medications that help in tackling nocturia are listed below. The first one is anticholinergic medications. These can reduce symptoms of an overactive bladder. And the second one is desmopressin, which helps the kidneys to produce less urine. Well, that's it. Hope this video was informative. Thank you.